Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're digging into the world of John Brenkus. Based on the sources you shared, our mission is basically to explore his career, kind of pull out the core insights that make his work, well, so distinct.
That's right. And Brenkus has really forged a pretty unique path, hasn't he? One that sort of blends sports, science like real science, and just great storytelling.
Yeah, most people probably know him from his incredibly popular show, Sports
Yep,
Science.
absolutely.
But as we get into it, you'll see his work goes, quite a bit beyond that, into feature films, documentaries, that kind of thing. So let's start by just establishing who John Brenkus is, maybe looking past just that one famous project to the foundation of it all.
Yeah, getting that context is really key, I think. That helps understand the thread, that connects all these different projects he's done.
Totally agree. So who is John Brenkus, fundamentally? The sources describe him as an American film producer, director, writer.
And yeah, of course, the creator and host of ESPN Sports Science. But he's also like a serious entrepreneur, co-founder of Base Productions.
Yeah.
That's really his engine, right, for creating all this sports and science-based entertainment.
That company, Base Productions, definitely seems central. And it's worth noting right away, his range. It was there pretty early on. He directed feature films, documentaries like The Hornet's Nest back in 2014
Hmm.
and The Last Champion in 2020. So, even while sports science was huge or just after.
And I think what really makes him stand out is this pretty rare ability he has, taking complex technical stuff like biomechanics, the physics of how bodies move, and just translating that into really engaging visual story. He doesn't just like state facts. He makes you see the science, see it in action.
Right, turning science into something you can almost feel, something exciting. And that skill set, well, it found its perfect home in sports
Which
science.
became, I mean, an absolute game changer for sports TV, no question.
It really did. It ran from, 2007 to 2016.
Yeah, about that.
And it was just this incredible mix, athletic performance, physics, these really cool, elaborate experiments.
Yeah, instead of just, telling you how fast a pitch is, Brenkus actually showed you the force behind it, using things like high-speed cameras, sensors, even CGI. It really did feel a bit like Mythbusters, but focused entirely on
Right.
sports.
That's a great comparison.
They'd literally, put an athlete through some motion and then just break down all the forces, the angles, reaction times, using graphics that made it super clear, really compelling.
Like showing the sheer impact force of an NFL tackle. Or remember visually comparing Usain Bolt's acceleration like right next to a cheetah's
Oh, yeah.
over the same distance.
It just made these abstract numbers feel incredibly real, tangible.
Mm-hmm.
And Brenkus himself, as the host, he was so key to that. He wasn't just, reading lines off a prompter. You could feel his actual genuine passion for the science part of it. He just had this knack for breaking down the how and the why of elite performance. Made it easy to grasp, but it never felt like dumbed down.
Right, right. And that commitment, that clarity and visualization, it went right into the production itself. Base productions, they brought in actual scientists for accuracy, real athletes doing the actual feats, and, Hollywood level effects to make it all pop visually.
Exactly. It really was a deep dive right
Mhm.
there on screen.
Yeah.
And, that same analytical rigor, that commitment to visual storytelling,
Yeah.
you can kind of see him carrying that over into his film work, too.
Right. Okay, so that's the transition from this groundbreaking sports analysis on TV to feature films. One of his big projects there was The Hornet's Nest.
Yeah, the 2014 documentary. That followed journalists embedded with U.S. troops during some really intense combat in Afghanistan. Quite a shift, wasn't it, from the
Yeah.
sports science studio and high-speed cameras. Showed a totally different kind of storytelling, different directorial muscle. It was pretty raw, visceral, got a lot of critical tension.
Definitely showed versatility. Then came The Last Champion in 2020. That was a drama, starred Cole Hauser.
Cole Hauser, about a former wrestling star, kind of trying to find redemption back in his hometown. Classic underdog story, really.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating there, I think, is how you can almost see that sports science mindset kind of influencing the filmmaking,
Mm-hmm.
especially in The Last Champion. Think about the wrestling scenes. It feels like they were filmed with that same analytical eye,
Yeah.
looking at body mechanics, leverage, force.
Mm.
Stuff he honed, analyzing athletes scientifically.
That makes total sense.
It's not just like fight choreography. It feels grounded in the actual physics of wrestling.
Yeah, he's bringing that researcher's eye, that drive to understand the mechanics of performance, whether it's an athlete or an actor, to tell the story. Which, raises a really interesting question. How does that kind of scientific, analytical approach actually shape or maybe even enhance a narrative story?
Well, it can ground it, right?
Yeah.
Ground the story in a kind of physical reality,
Mm.
even if it's fictional. Add as a layer of authenticity, maybe.
Hmm.
So, okay, with this range of work, TV, documentaries, drama, what's next for him? What are the sources saying?
Well, he's definitely not slowing down. Still active in both TV and film, it seems. Base Productions is still going, developing new stuff.
And there were hints, right,
Yeah.
in the sources about new projects coming up that specifically blend sports with emerging tech.
Exactly. Which, given his background, feels like a pretty natural evolution, doesn't it?
Totally.
I think maybe that adaptability is his defining trait. He's shown he can take his core method, analyzing performance, breaking down complexity, visualizing it, and apply it across totally different media, from TV analysis to intense documentaries to, character-driven drama films. He keeps finding new ways to innovate instead of just like sticking to one formula.
Yeah, and if we kind of step back, looks at the bigger picture,
Yeah.
that adaptability, which is rooted in a very specific skill set, and that's why his career is interesting for you listening, he sort of demonstrates how mastering a particular analytical approach can unlock creative doors you might not even expect across all sorts of different fields.
He really is a creator who keeps pushing boundaries. So, okay, if we boil down everything we've talked about in this deep dive.
John Brenkus is kind of that rare person who makes learning genuinely entertaining. And he does it by just seamlessly integrating, rigorous scientific analysis with the art of really compelling storytelling.
Yeah, he shows you don't have to choose, right?
Yeah.
Between deeply understanding complex science and mastering the craft of telling human stories. You can bring intelligence and heart to both. And when you do that, you can create something really innovative, really impactful.
Exactly. And thinking about how Brenkus took that scientific analytical approach, the one he developed for understanding elite physical performance in sports science, and then applied that to shape narratives and visuals in his films. It makes you wonder. Consider an area you're deeply interested in. It doesn't have to be sports or science at all. But how might applying a similar kind of rigorous analysis, breaking down the mechanics, the forces, the variables within that field, how might that reveal surprising new insights or maybe unlock compelling new ways to tell stories there? Just something to think about.